Leland Vittert, right now. There he is, looking good.
All right, my friend. Good to see you. Great show, Chris. We begin tonight with the absolute pandemonium set off by President Trump's Liberation Day. 10 a.m., Tokyo, Japan, and Seoul, South Korea. And right now, the markets across Asia, the stock markets, are in a free fall. Why does that matter? Well, because it is a view into the future of what is going to happen to your 401k tomorrow. These are what are called stock futures, the bet on what is going to happen tomorrow morning when the stock market opens. A sea of red. America's ports are soon to be the battlefield in Donald Trump's trade war. So everything coming into America is going to be subject to a 10% tariff starting 2 days from now. That 10% at a minimum will be paid for by us, the American consumer.
In the face of unrelenting economic warfare, the United States can no longer continue with a policy of unilateral economic surrender. We have to take care of our people, and we're going to take care of our people first, and I'm sorry to say that.
We started the show by saying the current situation is pandemonium, and that's true. President Trump's Liberation Day is quite literally the biggest gamble of his second term. But here's the thing. Donald Trump does not care. Liberation Day is aptly named, not because it will liberate the American economy necessarily, but because it proves that Trump is liberated from the restraints and worries of his first term. And that's our Why It Matters memo tonight. To borrow a phrase from none other than Kamala Harris, today's massive tariff announcement shows Trump is unburdened by what has been. His first term, Trump was obsessed with poll numbers, having staff who disagreed with him that Washington liked. Think about General Kelly and others. He was obsessed with the stock market and what Wall Street did. He tried hard to win over skeptical Republicans. Now in his second term, Trump is fighting the American political system and the global trading system by literally blowing it up.
For decades, our country has been looted, pillaged, raped, and plundered by nations near and far, both friend and foe alike. None of our companies are allowed to go into other countries. And I say that, friend and foe. And in many cases, the friend is worse than the foe in terms of trade.
Donald Trump believes this protectionist view of the world in the way that priests believe in the Pope. It is just his belief system. His trade war is about moving from a global trading system to one built on deals and protectionism. And this shouldn't surprise us because this is exactly what he ran on and said he was going to do. He wants to rip up and rewrite agreements he deems unfavorable to the United States. Fact check, many are. Trump is basically saying the White House is open for negotiations. He loves nothing more than drama and a deal. He says he's good at them. Trump has been making this case for tariffs for quite some time. We checked all the way back to the 1980s when he and Oprah actually got along.
You do differently, Donald?
I'd make our allies, forgetting about the enemies you can't talk to so easily, I'd make our allies pay their fair share. We're a debtor nation. Something's going to happen over the next number of years with this country because you can't keep going on losing $200 billion, and yet we let Japan come in and dump everything right into our markets and everything. It's not free trade.
For years, hardworking American citizens were forced to sit on the sidelines as other nations got rich and powerful, much of it at our expense.
In Trump's first term, he flirted with tariffs, even imposed some, but nothing like those in today's announcement. Now his poll numbers are in competition with the stock market for which will go down the fastest. Again, he does not care. According to Newsweek's average of the 10 most recently published polls, Trump's approval rating is at 47%, 46%, the lowest so far of his second term. Lower on approval of the economy. Stock futures falling even faster. Dow futures, as you can see, are down 843 points. The NASDAQ has fallen by nearly 4%. Tariffs will crash the U.S. economy and raise prices on those who can afford it least. Trump knows it, but again, he thinks that he can have a better deal. And in the interim, he does not care what happens.
There will be complaints from the globalists and the outsourcers and special interests and the fake news. The fake news will always complain. But Never forget, every prediction our opponents made about trade for the last 30 years has been proven totally wrong.
The administration's clear on this. They believe tariffs will bring massive American manufacturing back into America. I told you yesterday, it's a little bit like raising the prices of eating out so people cook at home more. Kind of like not ordering DoorDash anymore. But the reality is it's going to take years of Americans paying higher prices for this boom to take effect. Factories in America will open, and they will charge more because they can. The demand for American-made goods will go up, thus American-made goods will cost more. In the meantime, we will all have tariffs on the imports, everything that comes into the United States, and those tariffs will be paid by the American consumers. And Donald Trump does not care. He thinks he's sitting behind the Resolute desk playing poker with 4 aces, and the American economy is in the pot. That's what we're betting on. So this day will go down as Liberation Day one way or the other. Either it will liberate America from the globalist shackles, as Trump promises, and free the American worker, or it will liberate all of us from our 401ks. We begin tonight with Chris Cillizza, journalist, senior advisor to the GA Group, and NewsNation contributor. We have kindly changed the graphic to your Substack.
Yeah.
Okay, rather than the Dow futures.
That was on my list of demands.
Oh, good. We're glad we can comply.
Hey, my friend.
Good to see you. I think there's another way to look at this, which is what I'm hearing from the American Midwest and from those who support Donald Trump, which is that everybody who has done well over the past 30 or 40 years and gotten very rich, Wall Street, Washington, D.C., the media, the donor class in America, are all squealing. Therefore, this must be right.
It's the old "the enemy of my enemy is my friend" theory of politics. You know, you and I have talked about this on air and off air before. I am out of the Donald Trump is definitely wrong business because the guy has defied the rules of political gravity so many times. Okay, so let me say that. With that said, caveat noted, I'm kind of with you that politically, in my mind, this is dumb. It doesn't matter if you're a Republican, Democrat, you don't care about the two parties. It's dumb because the near to midterm effect, even if the rosiest scenario winds up playing out, the near to mid effect is gonna be not great. It's gonna be higher prices. I mean, it's pretty simple. Now, Donald Trump's timeline is different than congressional Republicans' timeline, right? Donald Trump's timeline is, in theory, the end of 2028. It's a legacy.
It's his legacy, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. But,
you know, if you're a congressional Republican, let's say you're North Carolina, you're Tom Tillis, right? We're in a state textile manufacturing. You are on the ballot 2026. So if this is a long play that in the end of 2027 starts to come to fruition, that doesn't help you. So politically for the Republican Party, it's strategically dumb if you are trying to hold the House and keep the Senate in 2026. But this is your I don't care thing. I don't know that that's what he's focused on.
Well, it may not be what he's focused on. I think there's also something that we're not seeing here, which is the American workers, as evidenced by who Donald Trump brought to speak at the Rose Garden ceremony. Take a listen.
If I have watched plant after plant after plant in Detroit and in the metro Detroit area close. There are now plants sitting idle. There are now plants that are underutilized. And Donald Trump's policies are going to bring product back into those underutilized plants. There's going to be new investment. There's going to be new plants built.
All right, if it works, and this is my hypothesis, we learned from Joe Biden the economy is not what the numbers are, it's how people feel.
100%.
And if workers in these states and in these areas that have been howled out by offshoring of American manufacturing jobs, they may be paying slightly higher prices, but they are seeing a boom in the building of factories. There are help wanted signs out there. Their wages are going up because there is now demand for their skills and their labor. That may not feel as bad.
Well, if it works, is doing a lot there. I mean, you're right. Like, again, I'm not an economist, and I have repeatedly said everything I know about politics suggests what Donald Trump is doing is wrong, and the guy is now in his second term as president. I mean, I always put that in. I will just say, It feels a little to me, to believe that this will work. I think that Trump, in some ways, cultural reference-wise, his lens that he looks at everything is a little bit stuck in the 80s. I don't mean that.
This isn't the 80s. This is the 70s and the 30s.
Yeah, fair enough. I laughed to myself, sitting by myself watching this today, when he made a reference to Lee Iacocca, who died in 2019. I was like, how many people know who Lee Iacocca is? But regardless, it's a bet that, in my mind, you can put the genie back in the bottle, right? That the globalism, that the interconnectivity of the economy can be reverse engineered in ways that benefit the American worker. You use the words either big bet or big gamble. I don't remember, but that to me is exactly what you have to see this as. This is a gigantic chip pushing on something where the odds are not, in my mind, politically speaking, 50-50.
Right. Now, again, he made this point, and because I think both you and I are skeptical of this, and skeptical for the president in terms of for his popularity as a.
No, totally. I'm no economist, so I'm not saying this will work or this won't work. Politically, this is a thing that is going to tank the stock. You're already seeing it, as you pointed out. It's going to hurt his poll numbers. There's going to inject uncertainty, right? Like
collective royal we of those in Washington who know all. Made a lot of the same predictions in his first term, which he spoke to. Take a listen.
From the day of my election, the stock market went up in my first term 88%, with NASDAQ going up 155%, more than any president has ever had in any term in office, by far. And I think we're going to blow that away.
History is written by the victors.
Totally, and he's not wrong about those numbers. The one thing I will say, and you mentioned this in the open, he did not pursue nearly as broad-based tariffs in the first term as he is doing as of today. We'll see. I mean, again,
if you want to use a metaphor, right? In the first term, he was betting a couple of cows. Now he's betting the farm. This is the American economy. Can he single-handedly remake the American economy? And there's probably a lot of Americans who said the American economy didn't work for me over the past 30 years. I'm happy to try something new.
Which is at least part and parcel of why he won in 2016 and in 2024. It's a big question mark for me about where this ends up when, let's say we're talking and it's October 2028, where we end up there. It is much more, in my mind, dangerous politically if it's October 2026, because that's not that far from now.
Bill O'Reilly yesterday said on Monday, very skeptical, and made the point it's really April of 2024. It's a year of this, and Donald Trump keeps saying these tariffs are going to be on forever. We're going to pay down the national debt with them, on and on and on. That really this is a negotiating tactic.
So if that is the case, and it's a month, right? If in a month, in May, we're not talking about this, or he's got to deal with the European Union or India or Brazil, then that's a different thing, right? I'm saying if he is committed to saying we are keeping these reciprocal tariffs on across all these different nations, we know what the near-term stock market and political impact will be, and it is not good for Republicans. Thanks, Steve. Of course, thank you.
All right. Trump wants to punish other countries with his new tariffs, but how Americans already struggling to make ends meet may be the ones getting the real gut punch.
This will be indeed the golden age of America. It's coming back, and we're going to come back very strongly.
Thanks for listening to NewsNation on the go. I'm Marnie Hughes. We're here for you 24/7 on the NewsNation app or on your Alexa. Just say play NewsNation.
After hours, I've never seen anything like it. This, I think fair to say, is worse than the worst case scenario of the tariffs that many in the market expected.
That's what trade wars are, right? Someone puts on a tariff, someone fires back, and then all of a sudden prices are rising for everyone across the supply chain.
No Liberation Day celebration on Wall Street.
One thing is for sure, the fallout from Trump's tariffs won't be as bad as the media hysteria over them. Never is. Trump is promising short-term pain will bring long-term gain to America, but more specifically to American workers.
We will supercharge our domestic industrial base. We will pry open foreign markets and break down foreign trade barriers. And ultimately, more production at home will mean stronger competition and lower prices for consumers. This will be indeed the golden age of America. It's coming back.
With us now, Congressman Jason Smith from my home state of Missouri, chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee. Welcome to the program, sir.
It's great to be with you.
Thanks for being on set. A lot to unpack here. Ultimately, more production at home. Short term, meaning there is going to be rising prices. We do a lot on this program that the media hysteria is always overblown when it comes to Donald Trump. Signalgate didn't matter to most of Americans. We learned from Joe Biden, rising prices matter to everybody. It's personal. Is voters in Missouri willing to accept this pain?
So first off, the president's making these decisions based on how he thinks it will help Main Street, not Wall Street. That is a huge focus. He's looking at the producer rather than the consumer. He's looking at the paychecks. He's looking at the quality jobs. He's all about what he campaigned on, and that is to defend American manufacturers, American farmers, and American workers. He believes that the United States has not been treated fairly.
I hear all that. We heard him say all that. Again, voters in Missouri who you talk to, there is going to be short-term, at the very least, rises in prices. You're nodding along because there's no other way to cut this. Are they prepared to accept that pain?
So I represent one of the poorest congressional districts in the nation. What I hear from my farmers, agriculture is the #1 industry in my region, is that we're willing to have the short-term pain for the long-term gain. When you look at our agriculture trade deficit is $32 billion. When Trump was in office, we had a $5 billion surplus. For the first time in decades, we now have an agriculture trade deficit. We have to open up those markets. The problem is you have countries like Japan that charge a 700% tariff on rice. We grow rice in the Boot Hill of Missouri. We want to be able to sell our rice everywhere. But whenever a country who's supposed to be our friend charges a 700% tariff, that's not acceptable.
Okay, so you're making the point, and I understand it, it's a good one, that this is a negotiating tactic. This is a way of forcing better deals. We've heard that from President Trump. We have also, in the same speech, heard that this is a permanent policy to raise trillions of dollars in fees, in tariffs. Take a listen.
To all of the foreign presidents, prime ministers, kings, queens, ambassadors, and everyone else who will soon be calling to ask for exemptions from these tariffs, I say, terminate your own tariffs. It's our turn to prosper, and in so doing, use trillions and trillions of dollars to reduce our taxes and pay down our national debt.
So which is it? Is it a negotiating tactic to get better deals, or is this long-term, as Peter Navarro would like, building walls around the American economy?
It's a little bit of both, from a long-term revenue stream that could come in, because there are some countries that will absolutely not drive down their tariffs. And so that will provide revenue. What the president did today was the executive order for reciprocal tariffs. Is if a country charges us 700%, we'll charge them 700%. He actually is saying he's being a little bit nicer. He's not going to go directly at 700%. It's going to be a little bit
There's
less.
some arguments about how they came up with these numbers, but go ahead.
But what we will say is that the United States, up until today, had the lowest tariff rates in the world. And I can tell you, I just looked at a report very recently that showed 132 different countries, over 600,000 products that had huge tariffs on U.S. exporters. In fact, 2/3 of all of those products had higher tariffs on us. It's about the producer.
I hear you. It's the consumer that ends up paying the tariffs. It's just the laws of economics. And hearing all of these numbers and ideas and statistics, it reminds me a lot of what the Biden administration threw out when we all said, hey, People are hurting. Main Street is hurting because prices are up, because of inflation, because of the Inflation Reduction Act and the spending. And they would throw out all these statistics that said the economy was doing better, and they built this many, energy efficient windows and on, and still Democratic members of Congress got shellacked and Donald Trump got elected because prices were high. Prices are going up. It doesn't worry you at all.
Inflation went up 21% under President Biden. When President Trump did the China tariffs in his first administration, his inflation averaged just at 2%.
That was one country that was very targeted. That's way different than 10% across the whole world.
Who's in the top 3 of the most largest trading partners? It's China, Mexico, and Canada are in the top 3. And so what he did with China was not inflationary. People are saying that it's inflationary. We have history. History, when he was president, was not inflationary.
All right.
Thank you, sir.
Congressman, it's great to have
Appreciate
you.
it.
Thank you for the conversation. We really appreciate it. People of Missouri are lucky to have you representing them. It's good to see you, sir. Thank you. You heard it here first. Then Newsweek, The Daily Beast, Mediaite, Huffington Post, and our partners at The Hill all picked up our reporting last night about Senator Cory Booker. His 25-hour and 4-minute speech prompted pollster guru Frank Luntz to make a 2028 prediction on our show last night.
What I saw over the last 25 hours absolutely blew me away. And just as you sometimes make projections or predictions, I'm going to do one right here. That speech puts Cory Booker as one of the leaders for the Democratic Party, 2028.
Today, NBC, among others, said Booker proved he was the fighter Democrats need.
He promised to lower your grocery prices, they're higher. He promised, I'll be a better steward of the economy. It's worse than we inherited. Over and over, he's breaking promises and doing outrageous things like disappearing people off of American streets. Do we see what's happening? How much is enough?
With us now, Mehdi Hasan, CEO, editor-in-chief of the new media company Zito. He's also a columnist for The Guardian, former host on MSNBC. Mehdi Hasan, good to see you. I said earlier on Twitter, one of your favorite platforms, I promised, I'm not smart enough to argue with you, so I'm not going to. I'm looking here for your insights. Is everybody getting a little too high on Cory Booker right now?
Probably. And I say that not because Cory Booker hasn't done something pretty astonishing and impressive this week. I mean, he broke a record. He's going to go down in history. Whatever we think of him, whatever you like him or hate him, he's broken a record. What he did was impressive. He didn't just do 25 hours and 5 minutes of speaking on the Senate floor and not go to the toilet once, but he spoke with substance, right? He spoke with eloquence. He spoke at times without any notes. So as someone who studies rhetoric, I was very impressed. But the reason I say I agree with you that people are getting high on this is we're not even at 100 days, Leland, right? Trump's first term is not even 100 days old. Let's calm down. Trump years are like dog years. You just can't get a sense of time. The idea that we know what's going to happen in July of this year or November of this year, let alone November of 2028, is insane. Right? Things are changing very fast. And by the way, Booker was a strong candidate in 2020, but didn't go anywhere. So the Democratic primaries have always kind of thrown a lot of people off at times.
Okay, fair enough. This is what I heard a lot from Cory Booker, and I understand why Democrats are angry and upset and worried. A lot of people in America are. But he spent in almost the entire amount of time complaining about Donald Trump and very little time offering anything new. I have a lot of Republican friends who, when we did the interview last night with Frank Luntz, were giddy at the idea of the Republican nominee in 2028, it's not going to be Donald Trump, let's not go down that road, running against Cory Booker because they said he's going to be really easy to beat. Does Booker need and Democrats need to offer something different?
A couple of things. Obviously, it doesn't really matter what Republicans are saying now about who they want to beat. Every party says about the candidate they either like, or he's going to be easy to beat or not easy to beat. That's kind of the way politics is done. What I would say, and I know you don't want to have an argument, but I will push back on one thing you said. I do think we have to talk about Donald Trump in 2028. He just went on Meet the Press and told Kristen Welker what a lot of us have been warning about for many months now, which is he has no intention of just quietly receding into the darkness in 2028, going off to play even more golf than he currently does. he wants to stick around, whether that means running for president again, doing this ridiculous plan where he runs on a ticket with Vance and then Vance hands over, or cancelling elections, which is the real extreme scenario.
Let me just go with
extreme scenario. But the idea that Donald Trump is disappearing from the scene, for you to say that so casually, I think people have been proved wrong again and again. When I said in 2019 he wouldn't leave peacefully in 2020, people laughed at me. Okay. Unfortunately, I was vindicated in the worst way.
Okay. I think Donald Trump's trolling everybody and getting the left to freak out over something that's not going to happen. You think otherwise, we'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
There seems to be this desire inside the Democratic Party to rationalize away why Donald Trump won and Kamala Harris lost. There's all these books coming out about Joe Biden and how he covered it up and how everybody did everything. Fine. And part of these books now is rationalizing why Kamala Harris lost. Take a listen.
President Obama absolutely did not think that Joe Biden should continue, according to our sources close to President Obama. And he also didn't want Kamala Harris to be the replacement for Biden. He didn't think that she was the best choice for Democrats. And he worked really behind the scenes for a long time to try to have a mini primary or an open convention or a mini primary leading to an open convention. He was really working against her.
This isn't a game of Clue. This isn't, the professor in the library with a candlestick. Why is it so difficult for Democrats to say Kamala Harris was a terrible candidate? It was an unpopular message. Donald Trump connected with working class voters that Democrats abandoned. We need to change.
So to be fair to Cory Booker, he was self-critical. There was one of his viral moments from that 25 hours was talking about how he wanted to talk about how he had made mistakes, how the party had made mistakes. I think that's right. People do want to hear that from a party that loses an election. On Obama, I think there's a real problem with this narrative. If Jonathan Allen, a former colleague of mine who I respect, if he's right with his sources, and I have no reason to believe otherwise, that Obama didn't want Biden and didn't want Harris, then why didn't he push Biden out of the race much earlier? The reason we had Harris, and people like me said we've got to go with Harris, simply because it wasn't practical to have a mini primary open convention at that late stage in July, August. Remember, in June last year, Leland, Obama joined Biden for a record-breaking fundraiser in LA. That was a month before Biden stepped aside. What the hell was Obama doing? I think everyone at the top of the Democratic Party who was associated with the decision to keep Biden in the race should be drummed out of Democratic Party politics forever.
Okay, that going to happen?
No, because Democrats never take accountability and the elites get away with everything. Chuck Schumer is still leader of the Senate. If you lose an election, right? I'm from the UK originally. Traditionally in the UK, a party leader loses an election, they step aside. Chuck Schumer lost the majority in the Senate. He should step aside. Why is he still the minority leader?
Well, because he controls the purse strings would be my answer, and he's worried about a primary from AOC. Here he is saying essentially that last night when a Democrat won in Wisconsin, the Supreme Court seat, that this is now the beginning of the Democratic comeback. Chuck Schumer.
Look at what happened in Wisconsin yesterday. The American people understand that Trump is not on their side. The American people are seeing how bad Trump is, and they are not supporting people like Elon Musk and those who support Donald Trump.
Again, a little bit too much wishful thinking?
Well, certainly the Democrats didn't win in Wisconsin because of Chuck Schumer. Chuck Schumer had nothing to do with that victory. That victory was to do with the Wisconsin Democratic Party. People like Ben Wickler, the chair, who's a fantastic organizer and campaigner, lost out for the DNC chair. And it had to do with Elon Musk. Let's not forget that it's always good to have a villain and an opponent and have someone to blame. And it's great news that Republicans are tying themselves to Elon Musk, a man as unpopular as Donald Trump. Great. I mean, Trump and Musk are great people to run against, and Democrats should run against them. Every time they run against Trump and Musk, with the exception of last year, although midterms, they did very well, if you remember, in the Trump first term, you need a villain. Republicans are the masters of creating villains, people to blame, people to point at, people to hate. Democrats are not. And therefore, if Musk and Trump volunteer themselves as villains, great, take it.
Yeah, look, getting people angry turns people out. You make a great point, getting Ben Wickler on the show, something that we've tried to make a priority. You speak to so many Democrats. When you think about their head right now, is there a realization that you can't beat somebody, which is sort of whatever MAGA is, with nobody? How do they find a leader?
So it is the $64,000 question, and I think you're seeing the left put forward people, you're seeing centrists put forward people, Cory Booker is clearly going to be a candidate, but fundamentally it doesn't really matter. The 2028 runners and riders are irrelevant to the here and now. In the here and now, Donald Trump is tearing apart the constitutional fabric, democratic values, changing the laws, demonizing judges, ending foreign alliances, wrecking the economy. That needs to be dealt with in the here and now, and that requires a Democratic Party.
Can you deal with that without? We'll agree to disagree on what exactly the terminology for what he's doing is, but can you have that fight while Democrats are fighting amongst themselves?
Yes, if you can actually have people who come forward and take risks. The beauty of what Cory Booker did and the beauty of what Bernie Sanders and AOC have done is that they haven't bothered to get involved in those fights. They're like, whatever everyone else is doing, who cares? We're, to quote Nike, we're just going to go just do it, right? So he just went out there and said, I'm going to do this for 25 hours. Bernie just said, all right, I'm going to go on an oligarchy tour. And people are like, you shouldn't say the word oligarchy. Well, he went out and got tens of thousands of people turned out. So Democrats want to see people doing stuff, standing up, not rolling over, not surrendering, not capitulating. Anything, literally anything, rather than nothing.
That's a good point. Just do something is oftentimes the best solution. Mehdi Hasan, first time we've had you on the program. It will not be our last. We're really glad to have you. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, appreciate it. First wrote about this in War Notes. That's your chance for a inside look at the show every day. It is free. warnotes.com to subscribe. You will be delighted, smarter, and you will impress your friends with your knowledge after you check your email every day at 7:05 p.m. at Leland Vittert on social media, Instagram and Twitter. The death of actor Val Kilmer is a reminder that they don't make movies like Top Gun anymore. But there is hope. Is Hollywood now learning a lesson?
You're listening to On Balance with Leland Vittert on NewsNation's audio stream. Available 24/7 on the NewsNation app, or just say, Alexa, play NewsNation.
What's your problem, Kazansky? You're everyone's problem. That's because every time you go up in the air, you're unsafe. I don't like you because you're dangerous. That's right. Nice, man.
Actor Val Kilmer died Tuesday at age 65. Many of you know him as Iceman from Top Gun, one of my favorite movies. He was the fan favorite. Kilmer wore the notorious Batman cape, stepped into the shoes of Jim Morrison, and starred in that iconic bank heist scene. You didn't change the channel, did you? We all miss movies like that. They don't make them anymore. Kilmer was just one of the last Hollywood men that reminds us of times past. His death is a reminder they don't make movies like Top Gun anymore.
One last thing. Who's the better pilot? You or me?
This is a nice moment. Let's not ruin it.
Kilmer's appearance in Top Gun Maverick was brief, but it was powerful. His passing represents a dying breed in films that everyone was able to get behind, talk about when we all saw them on Monday. A time when Hollywood actually loved America. That's surely not the case anymore. Now we're lectured on our political correctness. What's celebrated at award shows is a lot different than what's fun to watch.
Hello, very nice to meet you. I'd like to know about sex change operation.
I see. Men to woman, or woman to men.
Man to woman.
From penis to vagina.
Oh, I'm taking a shot. Fire! Bingo! Flush that sucker, yeah! Ice, watch out, there's a big deer right. He's firing!
At least Hollywood's transparent about things. They care a lot more about being woke than about money. Hard to believe how much Hollywood has changed in 40 years, but it has. The original Top Gun made $357 million worldwide. that was back in 1980s money. The sequel brought in $1.5 billion, whereas Emilia Perez, which was the weird musical that we played a clip from, won Best Actress this year. It brought into the box office $16.3 million. No surprise there. But there is hope, and we love hope on this show. Yellowstone, Landman, Gladiator 2. Perhaps Hollywood is now learning its lesson. Amazon wants to bring back James Bond back to its roots of Sean Connery. Woke ruined James Bond. You can't have a woke spy. Martini, shaken, not stirred. Just doesn't sound the same. Everyone in America is up worried about their 401ks, perhaps with good reason, except maybe the 535 members of the United States Congress. What they know that we don't, and how it's making them millions. Throughout this hour, we have been watching stock future markets and the markets in Asia plummet. Meaning tomorrow you're going to wake up and check your 401k. Just don't check your 401k. That's my piece of advice. Tomorrow morning, American stock markets are going to be in the red big. But there's one group of Americans who probably don't have any fear at all and will sleep very soundly tonight. We're talking about members of Congress who have continually outperformed Americans with their investment strategies. 24 members of Congress outperformed the S&P 500 last year. These are the top 5. And we are, of course, not making any accusations here. But to be clear, these 5 did as well, if not significantly better than Warren Buffett did last year. And yet they had a full-time job in Congress. Some of them got lucky and they invested early in a company or two, but it is unusual. And to Elon Musk and the Doge boys, it looks highly unusual.
I'm trying to connect the dots of how did they become rich while how'd they get 20 million if they're earning 200,000 a year? It sounds, nobody can explain that. So something's, yeah, we're going to try to figure it out and certainly stop it from happening.
There's been a lot of attempts to get members of Congress to stop trading stocks. Hasn't worked out so far. Chris Joseph's co-founder of Autopilot, an app that lets users invest alongside politician stock trades. So help us understand how this works, because politicians have to disclose they can invest, and then you allow people to invest the same way politicians do.
Yeah. So back in 2022, 2023, we saw these politicians continually make trades, sit on committees that oversaw those trades, and we wanted to build a way to get in on the action. So we essentially built like the first product. It's an app that allows you to automatically take your stock portfolio and literally do whatever they do. So when Nancy Pelosi goes and buys NVIDIA, your portfolio would also buy NVIDIA. If she goes and sells, you would sell all automatically directly in your broker. And you bring up these kind of the members of Congress making the most trades. We have not just Pelosi. We have Josh Gottheimer on the platform, Tommy Tuberville, Marjorie Taylor Greene. It's not just Pelosi. It's a right side, it's a left side issue. And this is what we're trying to bring more attention to.
And we need to be clear that a lot of these members of Congress, and I say this again, are outperforming very successful investment managers. You're in the investment world. How unusual is that?
It's unusual. It's not as unusual when you have a couple of years. You know, 1 year you do it, next year you don't. What's interesting with them is they've continually done it. So Unusual Whales has a great report, I think you showed it, where these politicians have been, on average, outperforming them over the past few years. So Debbie Wasserman Schultz, she's outperformed the SPY 2 of the last 3 years by a significant margin. Nancy Pelosi, 2 of the last 3 years, she's also outperformed the SPY. It happens more than you think. And when you kind of realize the position that they're in and what they're doing and how they are outperforming in the individual stocks, that's, I think, where the suspicion kind of starts. And it's right that we do call them out, and more people, and Elon in that team, you should look into it. There is stuff going on. You know? Okay, so I favor banning Congress and relatives buying stocks. 87% of Republicans, 88% of Democrats, 81% of independents. The rest of that group must be the people who are saying they don't favor it are probably related to members of Congress. But this has been something that's been going on for 30 years they've been talking about. Is there any chance of this ban happening? I would hope so. So the way that we have connections over out in DC, and we've been trying to work with kind of lobbyists and things of that nature to get a ban through.
Boy, the ban would put you guys out of business, though.
We'll take it. I mean, look, I'm 29. Do I need to keep calling these politicians out until we get a ban? Like, I need to move on to the next thing. And autopilot, to be clear, we're trying to redefine money management. So, like, there's trust and transparency that needs to be brought into the financial government. Elon, Doge, they're clearly doing that. But I think there's a lot of shady stuff going on in the broader money management space. So autopilot, we're going to be going after that, where we will be bringing on financial advisors. We'll be allowing anyone to essentially launch their own strategies. So autopilot, we're not too worried about it. Will a ban, though, help the issues of, coming in and marketing around copying Nancy Pelosi? Absolutely. But we still 100% support the ban. We want to do that because
you're not worried it's going to get in, though, right? You guys, your business is pretty safe.
No. So, just briefly to give you a quick update on why these things get so complex. The American people don't know this. The farthest bill that got is on its way to get banned made it to the Senate back in January or July of 2024. The reason why it didn't get approved was because these politicians throw in what I think is a kill pill. And
Right.
because the fourth part of that bill was they would have to require you to divest out of any private investments. And it's like, we just
so
want
they
the
put
ban
in
from
something
stock
they have to
trading.
right. Yeah, they have to put in something so then they have an excuse to vote against it. Chris, when
Exactly.
you come to DC, I don't know, you may get run out of town by the politicians. When you come to DC, let us know. We'll have you in studio. Good to talk to you. Appreciate it. Yeah. One thing you will be talking about tomorrow morning, not your 401k, when we come back.
Thanks for listening to News Nation on the Go. I'm Connell McShane, and this is America's fastest growing cable news network, delivering fact-based, unbiased news from all sides.
Southern Arkansas all the way up through Detroit, there is a line of thunderstorms with tornadoes. A lot of people are going to be in a difficult situation tonight. Think about them. Also